prices finally going down? Is real estate finally going to get reasonable in Santa Cruz County? I read an article that said prices are finally going down and commissions out the window and buyers, yay, here we go, right? What am I even talking about? I'm Michele Replogle from Compass, and I am talking about the National Association of Realtors settlement that might be coming, hopefully in July. So I have shot this video many times. I keep trying to figure out a way to take everything that I'm learning, everything that's in my brain, everything my brokerage tells me, and put it in a digestible for you, something that will make any sense for you as a buyer or a seller. And I have to tell you, it hasn't been easy. No, it's not hard to understand. There's just a lot of it. So I thought maybe I'll just do a market update for April, talking about what it means to be a buyer and what it means to be a seller underneath this new agreement that might be coming down in the agreements between National Association of Realtors and the Department of Justice. So NAR, DOJ, you'll hear those acronyms. What does this mean to you? And let's start with buyers. Okay, for a buyer, what this means to you is you could call an agent like me and say, Michele, I want to see this property. And I say, great, but now it's required that you sign a buyer-broker agreement. I had to add this in because I had called the buyer-broker agreement is basically a form we use to ask the other broker to pay the buyer side commission or make sure that they understand that they need to pay it. So I kept saying buyer broker agreement throughout this video. It's actually buyer representation agreement. It means the same thing, but it's a different designation on who pays the buy side commission. So I'm sorry for the error, but since I filmed this video so many times, I decided not to film this particular one again, but just add this little caveat. Thanks. Stating that if the seller is not offering commission, that you will pay my commission, or you are hiring me to represent you, and you sign that agreement. And you're sort of what you're thinking about the commission part of it. Let's just understand this process for just a minute. What does this look like? Well, this looks like hey, I want to see 123 Main Street. And I say, great, but you have to sign the buyer broker agreement stating, blah, blah, blah. Besides the commission, just my representation duties to you. And you say, I want to see this property. I don't really know if I'm going to buy it, but sure, that sounds great, Michele. So you sign it, we go see it. And the listing agent will say to me, do you have that agreement? I need it for my files to make sure that they can tell their seller the understanding that I have with you, Mrs. Buyer or Mr. Buyer or buyer, right? So everybody's on the same page. Let's talk about commissions for a minute. What does that mean? Well, customarily, I will say that 2.5% is typically what I get for selling a property representing a buyer. So if you said, Michele, I want you to be my buyer's agent, I would say, great, here's a buyer broker agreement. Here are all my duties, everything I am beholden to make sure I take care of you, and that this is a calm, peaceful, satisfactory, transaction for you. I will work that hard and I will do that. And I do that anyway. The only difference is now the seller may not be paying me. It might be you, but how hard I work for you and everything I do will just be the same. Okay, so there's the commission part. What happens on the other side of this as well is that I believe buyers are going to start choosing houses based on the commission being offered by the seller to pay for the buyer's agent. And I'm going to link a video below. It's a snippet that has Barbara Corcoran in it. She's this big hotshot New York real estate mogul person. And honestly, I'm not thrilled with her. But the snippet she gives is really good to help you wrap your head around what this really means in the real world about this settlement. because I believe sellers are really going to still continue to pay 5 to 6% to sell their home. It may just come down to, okay, here it is, Michele, you take your 2.5 and then just go make sure that it gets sold on the other side. I'm okay paying the buyer's side to make sure that I get enough showings to, get the price that I want for my home, and to make sure that when I get an offer, of course, I know that that's the best offer I can get. Because if a seller opts not to pay the commission to the buyer's agent, fine, they don't have to. That's going away. Sellers no longer have to do that. Fine. But now it's going to be transparent that the buyer can see what the buyer agent is getting paid, and they may go down the line on Zillow. You have to look you have to scroll down. It's in it's in HOA and financial information. Underneath there, it'll say buyer agent compensation offered. And I've seen a few of them on Zillow that says 2.5%. So now the buyer is going to vote for properties, not just based on price, but for the seller that is offering a commission to the buyer's agent. And I have seen all kinds of properties online. They're going from 2 to 3%. I've actually seen more 3% being offered to the buyer's agent. Why? Because the seller wants to make sure they get the highest possible price and they get as many eyeballs. As a seller, you should understand you want as many people going through your property as possible. You don't want to say, oh, well, I'm not going to pay for the buyer agent representation, or I'm going to pay less, or barely anything, and then say, okay, thanks, listing agent Michele. You got me an offer. Now, can you tell me that's the best that I could get? And I'd say, well, you offered a great buy-side commission. So yes, I think so. And we had, huge open houses, large broker tours. We've had a lot of activity online. Yes, I can. The same seller says, I don't want to pay the buyer's agent. I don't want to pay for that representation. I'm just paying you. I've heard this a lot. Michele, I think you're great, but I don't want to pay the buyer's agent. And I get it. But what I can't promise you is how much activity that you're going to get, because now you don't just have a buyer agent looking at what their commission is going to be and how they're going to get paid. Now you've got the buyer thinking about how they are going to pay, because there's still some lender snafus about how they pay the commission and pay their down payment and pay their closing costs, and lenders have to work this part out. But now they've got to worry about all the other closing costs, reports, inspections, and everything like that. And they're going to be voting for properties that have the buyer agent compensation paid for by the seller. Does that make sense? So as a buyer, you were going to have to sign a buyer broker agreement as it comes through in July, as we expect it to, for every property that you go see. What that might look like is a lot like the COVID agreement, where we had to have everybody sign the agreement stating that, they would keep their mask on, they would keep their shoes off, they would behave, don't lick anything, don't get crazy and, rub your nose on the couch or anything like that. And we all had to be responsible and, do that. And it had to be signed for every property. And as a listing agent, I would get that agreement. I would look and I'd check and make sure all the parties and it was dated correctly and everything. And then I'd take that and I put that in my file. Well, it's going to be the same thing now with the buyer broker agreement. I, as a listing agent or the listing agent of the property that I show, we're going to be filing all those. That way, if there's any commission questions later of who's paying for what in the agreement, we have the buyer broker agreement there, and we also have the listing agreement. So now we have both sides, and hopefully they match. So that's what that's going to look like. And then for you, seller, on the seller side, you really, it's great to save a little commission, right? But if you want to make sure that you have as many offers as you can get, and if you want to make sure that you're getting the highest possible price that the market will bear, it would be a good idea to pay for that buyer agent compensation just to make sure. And don't believe it just because the agent goes, oh, I don't want to show it because they're only paying me 2%. You should know that the buyers are looking at that too. The buyers are looking at who's going to help them make that bridge, especially if affordability is an issue for them. So this is what you're looking at in terms of being a buyer or a seller in the market. You're looking at, signing a little bit more paperwork, because oh my gosh, as a buyer, you're going to feel like you've signed every piece of paper in the world. And sellers, really, it will be back to paying a bid, between staging and cleaning up the home and getting it ready and making sure that it's easy to show, and making sure that you continue to compensate the buyer agent just to make sure that you actually got that highest possible price. But let me just say at the very end of this video, before I let you go, we don't know how this is all going to shake out. Barbara Corcoran, as you'll see, as I put below, she tends to think that everything's going to stay the same. I don't know. She doesn't think it's going to be that different. I really don't know. I don't think a lot of the people that I follow and all the pundits and my company and broker and all that, I just don't think it's going to play out the way everybody thinks it's going to. It's going to be interesting. Real estate has done nothing but change since I got in it. When I first got in, it was barely on the internet in the fashion that you see it now. Then we had a mortgage meltdown. Then we had a huge short sale and foreclosure market. Then we had COVID. Now we have this. Honestly, the only consistent thing about real estate is change. Anyway, I hope you like this video. I worked really hard on making sure this is understandable. And if you have questions, please reach out to me. Please no realtor bashing. I am a professional. I do my absolute best. I absolutely love my town of Santa Cruz and try to do the utmost best for my community, as well as my buyers and sellers. So please be gentle. Comment, like, subscribe, share. Follow me on my socials. I'm on Twitter, X. I am on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook. But most of the time, I'm really reading a lot of the comments here on YouTube, making sure I get everybody's questions answered. Please reach out to me if you need anything at all. Stay tuned, and we will watch how this unfolds. And like I said, I guarantee you nobody has any idea how this is really going to play out. But I hope to talk with you soon. Bye.